This kind of expose features Hugh Hewitt, who is a guy that I respect a lot, about uncovering the Democrats' motives for having ICE agents unmasked so they can dox them and tell radicals where they live so their families can be threatened. And then we're going to end up on more with Hunter Biden. Welcome to Doug in Exile. This is where the happy patriots are. Hope you guys have subscribed and left a comment below letting me know that you're there. To the Quad Club, shout out to you. You really help keep the lights on around here. Here is Hugh Hewitt on Fox.
The call to dox these ICE agents, make their information public. Watch here.
What we're seeing is ICE agents showing up in unmarked cars, masked, and then conducting warrantless arrests.
Well, now, why would all these Democrats have a problem with ICE showing up in masks when they've never once asked to unmask their own Antifa protesters, remember, or Black Lives Matter protesters? In fact, they love seeing masks on people in those cases. So I'm just saying, why would they care about masks now other than to put ICE agents in danger?
The 1930s, and every single one of them, no matter what it takes, no matter how long it takes, will of course be identified.
These ICE agents running around our communities like masked bank robbers. No other law enforcement agency in America runs around our communities masked. It's time that we unmask ICE.
So that last point is really what they're pushing. Swalwell also said that they're terrorizing women, Hugh. What do you make it as it stands right now?
Well, good morning, Bill. Congressman Swalwell is never going to win the spelling bee anywhere. And for people who can remember his 3-month presidential campaign, they'll remember why it lasted 3 months. He had a lot of idiotic propositions. This is about the dumbest one. It is very now well documented that ICE agents have come under physical assault. There was a shooting at the Prairie Land Detention Facility. It shot a Texas police officer, but it was an ICE facility. There was shooting at the Camarillo and Carpinteria raids on the cannabis farms that were employing aliens who were not in the country legally. And
so we already covered that. We showed the shooter just popping back, fires back at him. So the ICE agents are now the most wanted people, maybe outside of Trump, by the Democrats and by the leftist establishment.
Child labor. There have been documented weapons assault. That doesn't even go to the bricks and to the rocks and to the punches and to the dragging that you just mentioned. It's all illegal under 18 U.S.C. 111. There are other statutes that make it an even greater felony if you actually shoot at, attempt to murder a federal agent. And California can pass any law that they want. It will have zero impact on federal law enforcement officials, including ICE agents. I don't think there's anybody watching who doesn't understand that in the age of the internet, anyone who is doxxed is, especially law enforcement, put at extraordinary risk by the fringe elements of our society. I go back to that attack in Texas. 12 people assaulted a detention facility with firearms. The FBI's most wanted list got the #1 guy suspected of being involved in that yesterday. But I'm with Senator Kennedy. Every single person who assaults a federal officer or indeed a police officer of any sort ought to be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And I think that's probably a 90-10 issue, except for the radical left and the dummies on the left.
Okay, now, it could be a long, hot summer, and we'll see what happens in the fall after that. 2 more topics I want to get to. Republicans are trying to get those who worked around Jill and Joe Biden to talk. So far, unsuccessful. Here's James Comer last night with Sean on that.
The odds of calling in Jill Biden increased significantly today. We had her chief of staff and her self-proclaimed work husband there for...
Now, that's the creepiest title ever. Her assistant, her chief of staff, is called her work husband. What about her real husband, Joe Biden? That's like a really weird nickname. I could never be allowed to have an assistant that was called my work wife. What does that imply? Oof, it's terrible naming.
We planned to be an 8-hour deposition, and he kept invoking the Fifth Amendment, and his lawyer finally said, you can ask all the questions you want. We're going to invoke the Fifth Amendment on every question. So we need to know, was Jill Biden the one calling the shots?
Okay, it is clear that they're not going to give them much of anything at all. Does this go anywhere, Hugh?
Yes, it can. First, they should not call the First Lady. If Representative Comer's watching this morning, former First Ladies and former presidents occupy a unique and special position in America. Donald Trump's home ought not to have been raided by the FBI in 2022. It ought not to, his wife's apartments ought not to have been searched at Mar-a-Lago. And I do not believe they ought to call Dr. Joe Biden to testify, because we just don't do that in the United States, and we should not escalate at this point.
This is true. You cannot have a wife testify against her husband. There's some giant long-standing rule about that. So it's going to be very hard to get to Jill Biden, very easy to get to all of her aides and assistants. They're allowed to do that, but I don't think you can get her to incriminate her husband. You could get Jill Biden to incriminate her own assistant and some of her handlers if they were being a little too aggressive on pushing the auto pen thing, and if Jill Biden indeed was innocent.
On the other hand, Anthony Bernal, Joe Biden's doctor, whose name I can't remember right now, all of them are pleading the fifth, which is rather suspicious. You can immunize any witness. And I eventually imagine the Congress will immunize, give complete immunity to people like Anthony Bernal and say, okay, now you have to answer or you're in contempt. At the same time, the Department of Justice may be opening up an investigation into the abuse of the auto pen. If they do, people can, again, always plead the fifth. You're not obliged on the United States Constitution to incriminate yourself, but you can also always immunize anyone, at which point they're immune from consequences, but they have to answer your questions or they go to jail on contempt.
I hope you guys understood that clarification. Anyone can come in, you can give them immunity, and then they cannot plead the fifth, because to plead the fifth says, I don't want to respond because it might impugn myself. It might it might incriminate myself. Well, if there's no danger of you being incriminated because they gave you immunity, then you can tell the truth. So it's another step they can come in to try and shake information out. And then the person might be able to get like a $2 million book deal if they come out and rat out what happened with the auto pen and the Bidens. That's an interesting technique that they're going to hand out a few immunities.
That's where I think it's going to go, and that's where I want it to go.
The doctor's Kevin O'Connor was there about a week and a half ago, and the excerpts of them not answering the questions were released later. One person who is talking is Hunter Biden. Here's how he addressed the role that he had within his dad's White House.
You think Joe Biden was involved in some cover-up? Do you think Jake Tapper's telling the truth when he says that I was the acting chief of staff of the president? I was in that White House 12 days over the course of the last 2 years of the administration. Clearly, because I had other things going on. Okay. You ask one person to go on the record that would ever tell you that I was in any way making a single decision about anything in that White House. I stayed as far away as I possibly could, which, by the way, broke my heart.
And what do you make of that commentary now, Hugh?
It's not true. I just finished reading the book 2024 by Josh Doxxing and two colleagues who investigated thoroughly the campaign. In it, they document that Hunter Biden pops up on a conference call in the Oval Office. He obviously wasn't in the White House. He popped up on a conference call, stunned everyone in the room. The counsel to the president said that was inappropriate. So Hunter Biden doesn't have to physically be there to be calling the shots. He put his 2 cents in onto how then President Joe Biden ought to respond to the Supreme Court's immunity decision in the summer of 2024.
And there was at least one day I remember where they found cocaine at the White House. So we know that could be a tie, could be a clue.
But that was completely a lie, what he just said. I don't think he was chief of staff. I think he was a constant presence. I think every book that has been done, not just the Tapper and Alex Thompson book, but also John Allen, Amy Parnes, and then this new one by Josh Doxxing, they document again and again and again. Hunter Biden was his father's second closest advisor after the first lady, and he is a convicted felon. And when they go to talk to him, he's going to have to answer questions. He's not going to be able to plead the fifth. Again, immunize, and then take a long deposition to find out what was going on in that White House.
So we'll see eventually if James Comer gets down the list to him.
Yeah, he's going to get down the list to him. I think they're going to get to Hunter. You're allowed to go after one of their sons, and they could just give him immunity and say, now you can tell us the entire truth. And Hunter Biden loves to talk and loves to have the lights on himself. So you need to find out who's going to give you the best information and then give that one immunity. And then you have all this testimony to go after all the others. And that looks like the strategy with James Comer. This is still a long, epic road ahead of them. Thank you guys for watching. Shout out to the Quad Club. You guys make this channel work, even when I'm working on vacation. I don't feel so alone having you guys out there. I'm Doug in exile.